Hey, good afternoon. Scott Luton, Greg White with you here on Supply Chain. Now, welcome to today's live stream, the Supply Chain Buzz. How you doing, Greg?
I'm doing quite well. How are you doing, Scott? How was Mother's Day?
Mother's Day was wonderful. We were back in church, saw a bunch of people we've been missing, got some hugs, believe it or not. Of
Hey,
course, I celebrated Amanda, much like I bet y'all celebrated Vicky, and just had a great day with the kids. The Braves took 2 out of 3 from the Phillies. So all around, the weekend was great. How about yours?
it was fantastic. I did my chores. My daughters overperformed on Mother's Day, so I'm very proud of them for that. We had great Cuban food. My wife gets choice of restaurant on Mother's Day, and so we went to our favorite Cuban restaurant. I love Cuban food. I love my wife.
All right. Not an endorsement, not a paid sponsorship. We all love
Of
Vicky
my
White.
wife, right?
Well, hey,
Unpaid endorsement.
that's right. Well, hey, we got a great conversation teed up today. We're going to have to jump right in soon. But so today's show, of course, powered by our friends over at OpenText, the information company. And at about 12:20-ish or so, we've got a member of the OpenText team joining us to
Yeah, our
talk
friends are here. How about that?
live and in person, ERP
Been a while.
integrations, supply chain collaboration network services, SCC in a new acronym, whole lot more. And his repeat guest, Mark Morley's been back. He got a bunch of high marks on his last appearance with us,
He did.
and he's back. So looking forward to that, Greg. Of course, we go live every Monday at 12 noon Eastern Time, Supply Chain Buzz, to tackle some of the key stories and issues taking place across global supply chain. So let's jump right in with a couple of programming notes. Then we'll say hello to a few folks, and then we're going to tackle some news stories. You ready to go, Greg?
Yes, sir.
Awesome. Well, let's start. Of course, our efforts are we're supporting some efforts to help our friends in India, and there's some good news. So amid all the tragedy, and that second wave is I tell you, it's been something. But reported cases on Monday totaled about 366,000 roughly, and that's the first time they've dipped below 400,000 since May 6th. So hopefully, rather, that's a sign of things to come. Greg, have you been tracking that as well?
I have. India is not the only country to worry about. They are just the most heavily impacted because their population is so enormous. Russia, Iran, and Mexico are also having big outbreaks as well. But yes, fortunately, we have this initiative. The rest of those countries are fairly well equipped to manage an outbreak. India needs a lot of help, and that's why we've partnered with Enrique at Vector and Chef Vikas Khanna and vibha.org to try and get some assistance there. And so far, we've actually been moving goods there.
That's right.
So big thanks to the folks at Vector Global Logistics.
That's right. Lots of marshaling of resources. So y'all jump in the effort. Give whatever you can. Give from what you have. You can shoot an email to the india@vectorgl.com to learn more, or go straight to vibha.org and give. Okay. On a much, much lighter note, we've got a series of webinars kicking off soon. This next one here, July 27th, we're going to be talking about how successful digital transformation can strengthen your supply chain and make it go faster or accelerate it, which is one of Greg's favorite words. It can be an accelerant. But check that out. We've got Esker, of course. Kevin L. Jackson's going to be leading the conversation, and we got Dr. Morgan Swink from TCU that's going to be joining as well, along with Nick Carpenter from Esker. So y'all check that out on July 27th. And then with that, Greg, we're going to say hello to a few folks and dive right into the news. You ready?
Yeah, I am ready. Let's see who showed up today.
Vinay is back with us once again. Vinay, hey, great to have you here. Look forward to your contributions. Peter Bolay, all night and all day, is back with us. Good Monday afternoon. Hey, Greg, I think we got a 10-picture update on this massive project that Peter is leading. So, Peter, hope this finds you well.
I must have missed that over the weekend. Is this the kitchen project?
I think it is. He's still dealing with contractors. So,
well, and he was helping a buddy with a shed or something like that too. So that delayed his project. Giving to others.
He's running his own PMO up there in Canada. So, Peter, hope this finds you well. Great to have you here today. Hey, Rhonda, Good to see you. Enjoyed your live stream last week. Cynthia Fields is with us via LinkedIn. Great to see you. I think we saw our dear friend Tom Valentine. Hey,
Holy
good.
mackerel.
So, hey, Tom, here I got a note just as we were coming on. You've got a big event with the new Georgia Logistics Association coming up this Wednesday. Hey, drop the link to the event in the comments, and we'll invite everybody to network and enjoy some good camaraderie. So, I hope this finds you well, Tom Valentine.
Yeah, and if you want to hear how hot the housing market is, listen to the story of how fast he sold his home. He couldn't find a lake fast enough to move to a lake house.
That's awesome. Well, Tom, hope this finds you well. JT Taylor is with us via LinkedIn. Great to see you, JT. Sumer via LinkedIn also. Hello. Great to see you here this morning. Gary Skinner's back. Gary's been dropping some nuggets via the comments. Great to see you, Gary. Rogero. I apologize if I got that wrong, but he from Triconte. What is that, Greg? Help me with that pronunciation. No? Well,
yeah, I don't know.
Most importantly, welcome, Rogero. Great to have you here via LinkedIn.
I'm hoping that's a spell check mistake.
Yeah, well, tell us where.
Tell us what that is.
Yeah, tell us what part of the world that is in. And great to have you here. Of course, Big Show Bob Bova is back with us. Good morning to you. Mervin is back.
All right.
Mervin, hope your family in Indy are doing well, although you're in Dublin. So hopefully this finds you well. Srinivas is with us once again. Srinivas, great to see you here. And then finally, and we can't get to everybody here, but Mark Preston, who's on the board, I believe, with the Association for Manufacturing Excellence. We got some good stuff with them this week, Mark. Hope this finds you well. All right, I'm going to stick one more in. Alay, hey, from Sudan. It's great to have you back. Really have enjoyed your comments and questions on these live streams. Okay.
Well, we got one more kind of showing off here.
Oh. Clay is on the move.
Yeah.
And how about them Braves, Clay? So I hope this finds you well in Mexico, at least this week.
Not working, by the way, as I found out over the weekend. He's hustling while he's down there.
That's right. That is right. Okay, so let's dive into, let's see here. This first story, Greg, are you ready?
Oh, yeah.
So this has been something, I'll tell you, to be tracking. So Colonial Pipeline, we all heard about this, I'm sure. Our guest from across the pond has heard about this story and has been tracking it. So as you know, this company, which is based here in Georgia, was hit with a ransomware attack that has shut things down for a few days. And of course, that's not good because it's reportedly is responsible, Greg, for moving almost half the fuel, variety of fuel, that's consumed on the East Coast. And so far, only partial operations have resumed. Now, get this. A cyber criminal gang known as DarkSide has been accused of this attack. And no one says they're saying any bad things about DarkSide. I don't want to make those folks mad. But no word yet on what their demands were. But these attacks have become much more prevalent. Get this, Greg. The average ransom paid in the U.S. in 2020 was up to $300K, over $300K last year. How about that?
That's not uncommon because most companies have an insurance for precisely that amount. I only know that because I used to go to Mexico quite often, and it was common practice to kidnap American business persons and hold them for ransom for precisely $300K because that's what most companies insured themselves for. It's some sort of ransom insurance.
Wow.
So it's easy to get. It is really, really easy and fast to get.
Well, you know, the most analysts say that as long as this pipeline is back up and running and not doesn't go on for days and days, we won't see much of an impact on pricing for gasoline and other things. But I got to tell you, Greg, over the weekend, I was at my favorite neighborhood grocery store, had my cart weighed down with all the stuff getting ready for our Mother's Day dinner, right? And they announced over the loudspeaker that their credit and debit card transactions had gone offline. Greg, I thought we were going to see a riot. I thought folks were beating down those infamous checkout lanes that we were talking about last week. It really, I mean, you should have heard the comments. And so naturally, my head, after this being in the news and of course all these other challenges we've seen, but I started going down kind of the rabbit hole as I sat and waited until the system came back online. You know, over the last 18 months, most of the supply chain challenges we've all seen, and we'll touch on later in this show, have not been fueled by, cybersecurity issues. There's been some undoubtedly, but the what if that could take place with groups like this or other folks that just want to do harm, other bad actors. And it really, I read one article that was surveying a panel of experts. This is kind of a sign of some things to come. So really kind of a scary thing to think about. What's your take, Greg?
Yeah, it makes me think about, we saw a great discussion when we were in South Carolina, in Charleston, at the SCACAIAG conference, the South Carolina Automotive Council and Automotive Industry Action Group. And there was a guy there who was talking about, it's not even a matter of whether you've been hacked, it's when they will activate against that hack.
Right.
So companies need to be very aware, and companies like this ought to be extremely diligent. There are just so many openings. The target hack was from something you would not suspect. The people who swept their parking lots or something. All the cyber pros know who it really was, but it was like kind of a second tier procurement vendor.
Yes, it's really a scary time. Let's see here. T Squared says, can we say vulnerability analysis? Baltimore went through this last year with the public works, water and wastewater. The mayor did not budge. How about that?
Yeah, they did the same thing in Atlanta. They did not pay in Atlanta when they got hacked, and they just locked everything down for a certain time. I think that's one way to do it.
That's right. Hackers versus Packers. Let's see here. Mayor, great to see you here. I think he from India. I think I saw an earlier comment. Hope this finds you well. Let's see here. It looks like Tom did drop that address to the event in the comments. So y'all check out that event. It's a great opportunity to connect as a community. Okay, so let's keep driving, Greg. Let's hit the second story.
Yeah.
Let's see here. So I want to talk manufacturing, one of my favorite topics, one of our favorite topics, perhaps. A quick programming note. I mentioned the AME, Association for Manufacturing Excellence. We're going to be back with our manufacturing leadership series this Friday, 12 noon.
Right.
Billy will be joining me as a co-host. We're going to be interviewing a great old friend, Peggy Gulick, who is with Kohler. She's spent quite some time with AGCO and their Industry 4.0 initiatives, and you're not going to want to miss this interview. So join us this Friday, 12 noon. But speaking of manufacturing, so did you know, Greg, U.S. manufacturing activity surged to a 37-year high in March? 37-year high.
Stunning.
It is stunning.
Yeah.
But again, in a challenge that is not new, manufacturers continue to struggle to find workers, and not just your talented, welders and machinists, those high school that have been in demand forever. There's been a challenge last 10 years at least in those areas, but also these days entry level. Estimated to be 500,000 openings now across the U.S. manufacturing industry. And in a recent study, I think that was by Deloitte and the Manufacturing Institute, they're projecting it to grow to 2.1 million jobs available by 2030. Holy cow. So despite the fact that one of your favorite topics, that 2.7 million robots have been introduced into global manufacturing in recent times, humans are sorely needed. Carolyn Lee, executive director of that before mentioned the Manufacturing Institute, was quoted in this article on CNN Business as saying, quote, "The robots are not taking over. A robot can pick up a box and move it, but a person can be creative and get ahead of what's coming," end quote. All right, Greg, I got my popcorn, my Diet Coke. I'm ready for your take on this one.
Well, she's not wrong, first of all, on the creative part, but robots can certainly think ahead. But I get it. She was on CNN. She has to try to appeal to the masses. But I think that the ultimate message is that people will not lose their jobs because of robotics. They just won't. First of all, they don't want to do these jobs anyway. So we need to quit. And, you and I have had this discussion on air before. We need to quit apologizing for automation and robotics and autonomous devices because there aren't enough people to do these jobs. People are being paid $3,600 a month in the U.S. to sit home and do nothing, including not looking for a job. Did you know that, Scott? You don't have to search for a job to continue to get unemployment in the United States right now.
Wow. That's
So,
unbelievable.
so they aren't going to take these jobs. They aren't going to take entry-level jobs. Welding jobs they're high paying. They're better than college degree jobs, by the way. Things like plumbing and other trade jobs are going unfulfilled because people don't want to do that kind of work, right? So I think it's what's really amazing to me is that manufacturing is up at such a great rate. I mean, I'm not even sure what is driving that, and by what measure is it up so much? Did they give any detail on that? I didn't get to read the article, so.
Yeah, that all came from ISM and their monthly PMI index. I don't have that handy.
Okay.
But one big factor was just, as you might imagine, all the orders and order activity are up through the roof. So, but we'll dive in deeper to that. I want to get to a couple of these comments here. There's lots of comments here around pay. I believe this is Koze, I believe, with Gartner. And correct me if I'm wrong, Amanda and Clay. In 2019, he says Walmart hiked truck driver salaries to nearly $90,000 to fill the void of more than 1,400 truckers the business required. Many trucking firms have made similar moves. Marie says, Marie, hope this finds you well. It's been a little while. Congrats on your new or relatively new role. She says, labor is a huge problem right now. Will continue to be an issue all year. Multiple issues driving it, including COVID, government payments, competitors next door with higher pay rates, and so on and so forth. Antonio says here, the problem with manufacturing is the pay. These guys now are competing with the fast food places. The industry has to look at being more competitive. And then one final comment here from Rhonda, Greg. All over the news, people can make more money right now sitting home. I think last night it was $55,000 for unemployment benefits. Why work, really? Shame. Some wonderful jobs out there. All right,
it's
Greg.
It's a dangerous precedent, and it's going to lead to inflation in the country and probably greater social change, which may or may not be the intent. But it's going to create a real inflation problem, which right now in the States, the government debt is serviceable because the interest rates are low, but when inflation hits, they'll hike interest rates, which will make the incredible debt that we've created, trillions and trillions of dollars, difficult to service. So it's a very delicate balance, and I think we need to balance our desire for social reengineering versus the economic feasibility of such social reengineering so rapidly.
Sophia is back with us. Sophia, hope this finds you well. You've been busy. She says we need to redesign roles and purpose for upcoming workers, making it meaningful and attractive again. Excellent point. And then finally, Sylvia agrees with you. Sylvia, hope this finds you well there in the holy city of Charleston. Well said, Greg. My brother is a master plumber in Germany, and he just put a new French drain in my yard. She says, I am blessed to have craftsmen in the family because she can't find help. How about that?
Can you imagine how precise a German plumber must be? Well, I bet there's not a leak ever in the history of piping in Germany.
Oh, that's funny. That is funny. All right, so we got to move on. We got so much to tackle here today, folks. I love the comments, man. Y'all really. May 10th, let's circle this date. This is one of our more active live streams in quite some time. Great to see everybody. I wish we could get to all the comments. I want to go back to this next. We're not going to dive into the story, but I want to point this out. This story right here is, let's see here. So this was originally written by David Lynch at the Washington Post. However, I stumbled across it this weekend via the Seattle Times. And it doesn't surprise me. Other news channels are picking this thing up and sharing it. So this article, welding plant in Azalea's neck of the woods in West Virginia, to point out a wide variety of challenging circumstances that the industry is facing, whether you're manufacturing, supply chain, you name it. Raw material shortages, supplier disruptions with less than a heads up, right? There's always been supplier disruptions, but instead of getting 2 months, right, you get 2 days, as the article points out. Worker shortages, product demand increases, rising commodities pricing, shipping challenges, you name it. But it really paints a great picture and some of the exchanges between the different functional heads of the plant, some of the background behind what's leading to the plant. Of course, automotive demand is up. So y'all check this out. I think Clay and Amanda, if y'all could drop a link to this article in the comments, that would be wonderful. Greg, did you get a chance to read this over the weekend?
I didn't. I only got a chance to glance over just kind of the hook, and it's a really interesting microcosm of what is going on. Odd that they picked a West Virginia plant.
Right.
Frankly, I mean, I'm not sure everyone in America knows that West Virginia is a state. It is people, but what I saw was just the kind of a small study of what is happening to almost everybody in supply chain right now.
Yeah, it's really nicely done. The plant that is the focus of the article is part of a international company that I think has 45 different plants around the globe. So y'all check it out. I think we've just dropped the link in the comments. Hopefully y'all enjoyed it as much as I have, and let us know what you think and what was the most important part. I think I didn't have this quote handy, but basically the supply chain manager, I think was his title, said that in this day and age, it's just about how flexible you can be in a very inflexible environment. And I think we can all relate to that. Okay. So no shortage of stuff to chat about here today. Owolabi is back with us, by the way, Greg. Welcome. Greetings from Nigeria. Great to have you back with us, Owolabi. Okay. So Greg, you ready to bring on one of our favorite guests?
More than ready. Let's do this.
Let's do it. All right. So want to bring in Mark Morley with OpenText, a cloud integration evangelist who also loves manufacturing. And folks, you're going to love his POV. Let's bring in Mark Morley. Mark, good afternoon or good evening. How you doing?
Very well, thank you. And great to be on the show again.
Well, Greg, we enjoyed Mark's last appearance. It feels like it was like years ago, but it was probably about 8 months ago, I think 7 months ago, maybe.
Yeah, late last year. Yeah.
Well, Mark makes us sound much smarter because of the English accent. So we appreciate it.
Well, so on that note, we're going to start with the hardest hitting news out there. It's National Shrimp Day, folks. So, yes, there's a day for that. There's a day for everything. I've uncovered this site that really spells out all the different celebrations that take place across the country every day. But what is National Shrimp Day, Mark? What is your favorite method of preparing shrimp?
Well, basically, I asked my wife to cook them. That's probably the easiest way.
So she doesn't
so
trust
whatever
you.
way she likes best.
Put it this way: I'm not the cook in the family. My wife does most of the cooking, so I'm blessed in that respect. So,
hey, aren't we all? I tell you, not only is my wife Amanda got all the smarts in the family, but she certainly has all the culinary skills as well. She doesn't let me do too much. All right. So, Greg, what about you? How do you eat your shrimp?
Well, anyway, like I was saying, shrimp is the fruit of the sea. You can barbecue it, boil it, broil it, bake it, saute it. There's shrimp kebab, shrimp creole, shrimp gumbo, pan fried, deep fried, stir fried, pineapple shrimp, lemon shrimp, coconut shrimp, pepper shrimp, shrimp soup, shrimp stew, shrimp salad, shrimp and potatoes, shrimp burger, shrimp sandwich, and that's about it.
so that
quoting the great Mike Kelty Williamson, Bubba Blue from Forrest Gump.
Wonderful. I love that. And it's so
that
timely.
whole exchange was spectacular.
Yes, that movie is certainly one of our favorites and classics. One more fun question before we get into some of the heavy hitting stuff with you, Mark. Seafood. So where of your career, where have you gotten the best seafood meal?
That's a good question. I mean, I've been to Boston a few times. So I guess the crabs from that particular part of the world are certainly awesome. But here in the UK, again, my wife she loves fish restaurants. We go there quite regularly. I don't have as much fish as she does, to be honest. But I mean, there's loads of fish restaurants here in the UK that we certainly go around. But I'd say Boston is probably the most memorable, and also actually Singapore. When you look at the way in which they prepare fish in the Middle East, Far East,
black pepper crab.
Exactly, yeah. Compared to here, it's very different.
Awesome. And Greg, what about you?
England. I love fish and chips. I love. In the old days, you really used to get it on a newspaper. It's cooked in beef fat I don't know that colonists realize that when you go to England to a proper fish and chips restaurant, by the way, never buy fish and chips in a pub, always only a proper fish and chips. My favorite was in Victoria in London. I'm not sure if it's still there or not, but that you have choice of fish. You can have haddock or cod or whatever else. It's not just fish and chips like we get here. And it's about the size of the plate. And it's just delicious.
And in some cases, you can actually choose the type of newspaper you want it in as well. You know, whether you want to go up market, down market.
Right. I want the Times of London always.
All right, I got to share a couple of these comments here. So Sophia is a big fan of ceviche. That's great. Great call out there.
Yeah.
Sharky says, just don't call me shrimp, okay? Just don't call me shrimp.
Well, he's Sharky.
Yes. Owalabi, Greg, you've been promoted. Chef Greg now. And let's see here. Sylvia says, Charleston, best seafood, naturally. There's a lot of good seafood in Charleston as well.
There's great seafood there, no doubt.
Okay, so...
Shrimp and grits.
Yeah,
oh my God, shrimp and grits wasn't on there.
Yes. No sugar in grits, folks. No sugar in grits. So Mark, before we get into some of the issues of the day, really quickly, just to reconnect, maybe refresh people's mind, tell us about your role at OpenText.
Yeah, so I've been with the company about 15 years. As you introduced right at the beginning, we're sort of focused on supply chain integration. And I look after the product marketing team here at OpenText, about 7 people working for me, looking after all aspects of supply chain integration and keeping up with the trends and what's going on around the world. So working with many large companies to sort of address their integration issues, basically. But longer term, I've been in the manufacturing space working for various software vendors for probably 25, 26 years now. So always stayed close to the supply chain space, which is great, but also on how things are produced at the main end as well. So different ends of the spectrum.
Yes, agreed. And I tell you, we love manufacturing. It's some of the brightest, most hardest working, most creative, innovative folks in that sector across the supply chain, but I got a special place in my heart for manufacturing as well. All right, so Gregory, we've got a brilliant technologist here in Mark Morley. Where are we starting our conversation after shrimp?
Well, I want to talk about this concept of business to anything. So I don't know if everyone saw this. I think it was a week or two ago, I did one of my supply chain summaries on this whole concept of business to anything. So a fellow named Steve Banker, who I think most people know, but anyway, he's with ARC Advisory Group and is a long time, Mark, I don't know how long, but a long time supply chain analyst. And he was talking about OpenText. He was talking about this whole business to anything concept, but also that's something that you all at OpenText facilitate really well. He called you a supply chain collaboration network service, SCCN, whatever the heck that means. And I'd love for you to share that with us. So can you tell us a little bit about what B to A is what he called it, business to anything integration means, and how that facilitates this whole supply chain collaboration network?
Yeah, so essentially it's a term that I believe we actually coined. Now there are 2 parts to this. Firstly, there have been many companies over the years that have explored the B2B piece. Consider that the external integration of the supply chain.
Right.
Then on the flip side, you've got companies that want to extend that digital backbone into the enterprise to integrate with their applications. So application to application integration. So when you, I guess, look at the maths lesson of comparing and combining B2B and A to A, you get B2A, so business to anything. And the reason why we defined it as business to anything is because we're more than about moving purchase orders and invoices and digitizing transaction flows. On our network, we're connecting IoT devices, for example. So that's where the anything comes into the frame. So it's more about extending the transaction flows, the IoT devices. And of course, today, everyone wants to get visibility where their shipments are. Yes, right. We can move transactions. We can connect into shipping containers. Good example. A few weeks ago, there was a news item on the BBC here in the UK around companies wanting to keep track of their containers, what's in it. And of course, many of them were stuck in the Suez Canal. And one small story that appeared on the BBC News website was just before last Christmas, many of the garden centres here in the UK started to place their order for garden gnomes. And of course, we suffered here in the UK with the Suez Canal because many of those garden gnomes were actually stuck in containers in the Suez Canal. So we've got a national garden gnome shortage on the back of the Suez Canal disruption. I know this is one of many.
Now it's serious.
It's really serious now. But I thought that's just such an interesting story, but it just highlights that any product that gets manufactured, irrespective of where it is in the world, can suffer disruption. And you highlighted the pipeline disruption earlier on. But what we're about is really trying to help companies integrate their supply chains, improve the visibility of what's going on at any point in that supply chain. And that's really where the business to anything term came about. And we worked with Steve Banker to try and get his thought leadership and his impression on what that means to companies.
I think, what I found interesting about the article and about the concept is just imagine something that is the single source of truth for all of your data, right? Kind of a funnel or pipeline, if you want to think of it that way. And it not only connects you inside and outside, or connects you outside your organization to your trading partners, but so many companies have so many systems internally that have so much valuable data to the supply chain, and it's impossible for them to connect them, right? It's very, very difficult to connect, your finance system with your shop floor system or whatever. And to have something that really simplifies it, I don't know that I want to. I don't know that. Look, I'm not selling it, so it doesn't matter to me. If you can get to a plug and play kind of solution, right, where we want this data in the pipeline and we want it available to those facilities, I just think that is so incredibly powerful, because part of the way that you can collaborate with enterprise trading partners is to get your own house in order first. And that is a real difficulty for a lot of companies. But then you have so much powerful data, not just with your trading partners on the upstream. I call suppliers upstream. I think other people go the other way, but with your consumers and customers downstream, right? And that powerful exchange it's not just game changing. Of course, we have to say that. I'm also going to say unprecedented, just because COVID. But it's yeah, right. Here we go. It's really empowering, and Scott, accelerating. There you go. But it really is necessary in this day and age, because if you don't want to lose track of your garden gnomes, you have to know whose container, who was the forwarder, whose ship, what stack, how many, all of those things. Did it fall off in the ocean, like IoT and things like that can tell you? So.
Well, I'm sure there's going to be a gnome tracking service coming up, in the near future.
Gnome track, I like it. It's going to be like Santa track.
To use your analogy about the pipelines, that's exactly what we do. Whereas there are pipelines out there for moving gas, fuel, we're basically providing pipelines in the supply chain to move information. Now, that information has to be secure. It has to go from the right set of users, has to go into the right set of applications. So again, it's providing that integration, which I think is key, and that's really where B2A integration provides that capability.
So do you provide the gating for that? Include that allows you to say this gets through, this doesn't?
Yeah, so we can provide intelligence into the pipeline, if you will, that basically monitors the transaction flows, monitors the information, plus also having a suite of API connectors that links into SAP, to Oracle, to ServiceNow, Salesforce, whatever that backend integration is. Those gateways and those connectors are there as well.
So we've got, Mark, I sure am glad you mentioned that store on the front end. We're getting some gnome lovers with us here today. Sylvia says, garden gnomes are of German origin. I had no idea.
Yeah.
Mervyn says, an operationally agile supply chain for visibility. I hope I'm getting it right. That sounds like
correct.
Directionally correct. That the whole gnome thing, it just goes to prove, there's no demand for a product until there's a demand for a product, right? Who's ever thought about, I've got to get my gnome, I've got to get it, but until there's a shortage, and then folks are tracking it and calling for visibility, you name it. Who's the guy from the Yankees that always had sayings?
Yogi Berra?
Yes, there's a Yogi Berra aspect to this whole gnome discussion. All right, so Greg, where are we going next here?
Well, I mean, first of all, I want to say I think that garden gnome thing. That's a really relatable way to communicate to all of us, consumers, practitioners, manufacturers, distributors, retailers, sourcing providers, procurement people, everyone, that this is an effect of that. I think that was a brilliant move, Mark, to just simplify it down to that thing that everybody gets. It's kind of the toilet paper of 2021.
Right. So far.
Right? People are going to be hoarding garden gnomes. They're going to be buying them for their neighbors and their family members.
Just watch eBay. Watch eBay tonight. Their prices will go through the roof.
Yes.
Unless Elon Musk calls it a hustle. Then it drops like a stone, or like Dogecoin. But I think the thing that we have become really good at, I'll toss this out to you both. I think the thing that we've become really good at as practitioners in supply chain is making it relatable. I think we talked in the ages, in the last 2 decades, Mark, that you and I and Scott have been in supply chain. We've talked in such technical terms about such, frankly, boring topics that, and couched it in a way that people can't relate to, that it's this kind of discussion that really drives the point home of how supply chain works, why and when it does and doesn't.
Well, and to that point, I think many people have talked over the years, as you know, about just-in-time production and vendor-managed inventory. I mean, these are terms that every supply chain practitioner knows. But the question is, how do you sort of, to your point, relate that to the consumer? And it's stories such as those that do bring home those problems. You can talk about supply chain visibility and the problems of not knowing where your products are in the supply chain, just by using simple examples like that.
So if you think about this business to anything pipeline, can you give us an example of any aspect of the coming gnome shortage that could solve, or how it might communicate between parties or within companies? I mean, just to give us
essentially it's providing the transparency across all of the users from all of the trading partners. So from the original China manufacturing plant where these gnomes are manufactured, through the 3PL carriers that are going to be delivering those, either through air freight if it's an urgent gnome delivery, or through the containers, but then right through to the retail store. Now, having everyone connected to the same platform and provides that transparency of knowing where things are in the supply chain is critical. So ensuring that you've got 100% digitized supply chain is job number one, really. Make sure you've got all trading partners, irrespective of their role in the supply chain, to be connected to that same platform. And also making sure that you don't have silos of information in the enterprise that are not connected to that platform as well. Many companies have focused on establishing an ERP platform or a CRM platform and just integrating it or connecting it to their in-house network. But what about integrating the two together? Getting more insights and more information about what's going on across the enterprise. So it brings it more to the front.
Imagine a world where the consumer can not only know whether you have it, but whether you're likely to get it in time for them, and they can shop you based on the effectiveness or the timeliness of your ability to deliver by knowing your supply chain as well as you do as a gnome provider.
Yeah. Was that
gnome certified?
That was known or gnome. I can't get serious.
Yeah, it was. That's what I was thinking. It was gnome supplier, but it could be known gnome supplier.
We're gonna get every bit of goodness out of this whole gnome situation here today.
I think it's good to kind of tie it back to how that integration, like you just did, Mark. Thank you, as you brilliantly do always. But so let's shift gears a little bit and talk ERP, everyone's favorite topic, right? The solution that does everything and nothing at the same time. Business leaders aren't really replacing ERP as much as they used to. And in fact, that's been a trend you've probably been seeing for some years and benefited from, because there are so many focused solutions these days. There's so much old and invasive or tightly integrated data in these ERPs, and companies are looking for solutions that they can connect to improve their practice without having to rip out and reinstall a $400 million ERP product, right? So tell us a little bit about, what you think is really critical when somebody is doing this, because it's happening more and more often. It's not in the news as much as I think it ought to be, that people are leaving their, what is essentially a finance system that tried to be a bunch of other systems. They're leaving that in and then layering it on with systems that are more competent in other areas to kind of cover that up.
Yeah, I mean, there are many ERP vendors out there, and I'm not going to name them, that are migrating from on-premise to the cloud at the moment. They want to build a cloud-based ERP platform. Now, what many people don't realize is that when those solutions are sunset eventually, over time, they're going to be forced to rework the back-end integrations to maybe a transport management system, to a warehouse management system, or whatever those ERP platforms are linked to. So there is a mandate, there's a mandate there almost for companies having to revisit things. But we have undertaken a recent study actually with IDG, looking at the subject of ERP integration, because I think for many years companies have treated ERP as the sort of the central authority of every piece of moving information in the business. So we found, for example, in our survey that 44% of information entering ERP actually comes from outside the enterprise. So that's from the supply chain feeding the ERP platform. So if you don't have a highly available, connected digital supply chain where those transactions and information are coming into your business, and maybe IoT sensor data, then potentially your ERP information is incomplete. It's not getting the information it deserves. And also, many companies simply don't have the resources these days. CIOs are so focused on, what can I best describe as glamour projects, such as blockchain or RPA or other initiatives, that they will quickly divert IT resources onto those projects and maybe leave other projects exposed. And that could be really costly. You highlighted that some ERP implementations can be tens, hundreds of millions of dollars. And that's a huge investment by many companies. So they need to be able to leverage that information correctly and make sure that all information flowing into ERP is coming from the right sources and is integrated seamlessly. And that's the challenge today that we can partially help with, and that companies need to try and address.
So I want to point out a couple of comments here from the audience here. So I think this is Korai again, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong, guys. Careful. 2018, the Lidl ERP failure was in full effect, costing the chain about 500 million euros or $580 million in total losses. Holy cow. Wow.
That's not uncommon in these things. And believe me, that those hit the news and have been hitting the news for 20, 30 years. And that's why people are ceasing to spend $400 million to lose another $500 or $600 million.
Right.
When the thing goes awry.
Transparency, Sylvia says, in the entire supply chain with giving visibility to all participants. T-Squared says they're enabling and enhancing via EAI, TIBCO, and software. AG, anyone? I think throwing a rhetorical question out there, I believe. Sophia says, I believe success of implementing a solution depends on the urgency of implementation, how involved is a company in terms of implementing it, the overall understanding of how the solution works in terms of how it is transmitted and shared. Excellent points there. And then Sophia adds, what we can't explain is because there's an Einstein quote here. What we can't simply explain is because we don't fully understand it. Excellent point there, Sophia, and all. All right. So, Greg, respond a little bit to what Mark just shared before I took the comments there.
Yeah, well, I think, the thing that really struck me was the discussion you had around all of the glamour projects. I'm going to use that, by the way. Blockchain, AI, ML, IoT, add some letters. I call them keywords, right? When I'm looking at companies to invest in, I'm looking at their keywords. Do they have any of those keywords? But the critical thing to understand is every one of those glamour projects requires a ton of data, right?
What was that? A metric? Was that a metric unit you were just sharing?
Metric unit, yeah, that was
okay.
Metric unit of metric. So I've gotten pretty good at bleeping myself, haven't I? So that's a critical thing for companies to understand as well, because AI needs information to learn from. It's like you're trying to start a child speaking English without having them had months and years of having learned or having listened to it first, right? So all of that is data that we bring in so that we learn, and ML and AI are simply learning devices. So learning and evolution devices, but the learning part is critical and requires a ton of data. So that data, its availability, its integrity, its constant flow and filtering so that you get the right data into the right aspects of the business, that's absolutely critical. And it pains me to see companies that forget that when they jump on these glamour projects.
And just building on that, I mean, I think we all know that cloud, mobile, and big data has been around as a term since 2010. And I would argue now that cloud and mobile are certainly commoditized. Irrespective of what companies think about cloud adoption, it's here to stay. But when you think about AI in particular and big data, I think companies are struggling simply because they've not got the expertise within the business. And especially if it's AI and big data expertise combined with supply chain and knowing what insights to look for and how to monetize that information if necessary, or leverage that information is probably the better way of describing it. I think if we can find more better educated big data analysts that focus on supply chain, I think we'll get those use cases wrapped up. We'll get new solutions out there for supply chain leaders to look at and leverage in a much shorter time frame.
Well said. I'll share a couple of comments here. Peter says we need to right size to the issues being experienced to the solution. Excellent point there, Peter. Simon is back with us. Simon, hope this finds you well in your relatively new gig. He says ERPs that can't easily do outside in are going to be on the critical change list now, or rather yesterday.
People have been doing it for years. I mean, honestly, that's why OpenText is 10 times the size that they used to be just a few years ago, is because companies they've recognized that ERP can't and may never and may not have to do a lot of the things that they expected it to do when it was sold to them. So now companies are using data and providing that data to those more competent type solutions to solve the problems that they were promised that ERP has just never delivered on.
Yeah, no, I agree with that.
Oh, did we froze Scott? Man, I was just getting excited. I thought it was just me and Mark.
I think we're going to get a little rain out here, Mark and Greg. That happens from time to time.
Not again. Okay.
Goodness. All right.
Buckle up.
Buckle up. So Sheldon here, and Mark, I'd love for you to address this. He says, so I guess it's all about integrating ERP with demand sensing and delivery capacity and capabilities. Your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. And we have actually looked at a project, and we have a project that we've completed around integrating IoT sensors to sort of reenact the demand sensing piece with the supply chain to make sure that information goes into the ERP platform. It fuels the engine of the transport management system on the back end. So again, it's sort of highlighting that need for that single unified integration platform, I guess is the best way of describing it.
Yeah.
And I think now, even though we've had IoT systems available for the last 7 or 8 years, with all of the recent disruptions, whether it's COVID, whether it's Suez Canal, whether it's Colonial Pipeline, everyone is now, I guess, looking for what is the next best thing that IoT can provide to support that. So I think we're at a really interesting turning point, and I think we're going to see more, as well as AI solutions for supply chain. I certainly think IoT is now the right place, the right time to look at more supply chain integration opportunities as well, especially to support demand planning and the more demand forecasting. Excellent
point. Sheldon also adds storytelling from supply chain data is critical. Excellent point there. Aditya is back with us. Aditya, hope this finds you well. Lack of accurate data used as a training data set. Data collection methods need to be optimized. Excellent point.
Optimized and neutralized, because a lot of the data that we use to train AI and ML, it's biased data. So it makes wrong assumptions and assertions based on that.
Great point. So then that brings me to Sylvia's question here. So she would like to learn more about ERP integration into CRM and TMS, WMS. Any suggestions? Mark, any? I know y'all have a ton of resources. Any thoughts there?
Yeah, I mean, we're offering integration already from our 3PL customers, but also the suppliers as well. So that information, which could be an advanced ship notice that talks about, what's on the pallet, where it's going to be delivered, that information will be going into an ERP platform first and foremost. So we need to make sure the supply chain is integrated to the ERP. And then finally, you've got that TMS and warehouse management system further down the line that needs that accurate information coming onto that earlier post. Rubbish in, rubbish out. If the transaction information is not accurate and up to date, you're never going to get that part or product distributed on time. So that's where I think the AI piece can certainly add value. It can provide that insight into what is going on in the supply chain, plug the gaps, and hopefully enable a better support for demand sensing to that particular point that was just raised.
Wonderful. All right. So, Greg, any additional thoughts here before we start to wind down with Mark Morley?
Yeah, my immediate thought is, Sylvia, you ought to reach out to Mark, and if you want to learn more about that, I mean, either directly with Mark, or you can probably point her to some educational resources you guys or somebody has, right?
Yeah,
we can certainly help that, Chef.
Yeah.
So, Sylvia,
and she may pay you, by the way, in amazing jam, or who knows? She's in Charleston. She makes amazing jam, and her brother is headed back through Europe. Maybe she can get him to drop it off at Gatwick on his way home.
We'll make it happen. And by the way, Mark Morley is a great LinkedIn connection to connect with or to follow. So we encourage you there. All right. So Mark, as we wrap here, one final question before we ask how folks can connect with you. What's one thing across global supply chain that you're tracking more of, but maybe we haven't talked about it yet? What would that one more thing be?
That's a really difficult. That's a really difficult question. Given that we've covered so much.
that sigh is how the global supply chain community has been quoted for months now. All right.
That's so true.
So, yeah, that's
so
the tagline.
What have we not talked about? Right.
Yeah. What have we not tracked, and what have we not talked about? I mean, that's
well. So
I have a question. For you then. Maybe. What are you seeing? I mean, you are at the forefront of so many digital transformations and so many people enabling their supply chains. Hopefully, you're at the forefront of that, of companies enabling their supply chains with more data and more capabilities. What are you seeing in that realm? I mean, is there anything? Is it happening? Is it happening in greater measure or less measure than you expected?
I honestly think it's happening a lot faster in terms of the rate of digital transformation compared to where we were 12 months ago, because the supply chain is now on the top table of every boardroom around the world in terms of its importance to companies. Companies have got to wake up and understand the importance of supply chain and what's going on. So I certainly believe that it has accelerated digital transformation projects. We have certainly seen an uptick in our cloud services because of that, because companies want the flexibility, the agility, the adaptability, call it what you will, to provide better resilience to future disruptions. And that's what it's all about. Companies are investing today to protect their business in the future.
Excellent point.
That's good to hear.
So over the weekend, Paul Page, who's with the Wall Street Journal and the logistics report, made a tweet, and I'm gonna paraphrase it. But he basically pointed out.
Paraphrase a tweet?
Yes. Hey, limited mental capacity, Greg, on this end.
Well, must have been a really long tweet.
So he basically mentioned a company that was touting its supply chain capability over its competitor directly. Now, as we all know,
you have to paraphrase.
Yes,
sorry.
That's right. So, as we all know, supply chain has been a business and competitive advantage for a long time. But now that it works its way into, and if you watch TV for an hour, you're going to hear supply chain mentioned more often than probably ever before. But for it to work its way into, the direct marketing efforts, touting your supply chain prowess, it is an intriguing time to be in the craft, as Greg put it. Would you agree, Mark?
And also, I'd agree in terms of the graduates coming through university trying to work out what element of the supply chain spectrum they should focus on for their career. There's just so many different areas they can focus on now. And I think combining it with all the disruptive technologies, I used the word glamour technologies earlier on, there's just so many opportunities out there to sort of change tomorrow's supply chain and see where they go from there.
Yeah, excellent point. In fact, we're going to be kicking off a series, probably a quarterly series soon, where we're going to be putting our finger on the pulse of those students that are matriculating through universities and business schools globally. So we look forward to that. Stay tuned. All right. So, Mark, how can this has been, as always, all of your shows and appearances with us. We can never get to everything we want to talk with and bounce off of you, but we'll bring you back. How can folks connect with Mark Morley?
Yeah, so I'm on LinkedIn. I think you've got the direct links already, and Twitter. I mainly use Twitter and LinkedIn, if I'm honest, for my work-related activities. And everything I do is posting either supply chain information or manufacturing news, such as the Gnome story earlier on. So feel free to connect with me, share the content, and hopefully we can connect in the future.
Wonderful. All right. So
I have a feeling you better be ready.
Well, one other thing I like about Mark's approach is that he's just one steady kill. We could be talking about some of the most stressful challenges known to industry, and it's almost like listening to a bedtime story, Mark. I love it. I love your approach. And more importantly, it's great to reconnect with you. We've enjoyed collaborating with you in our friendship, and all the best to your family. Hopefully the second shot comes soon, and we'll be talking to you the next few weeks.
Yeah, you get to go traveling soon, correct?
That's true. That's true.
That'll be awesome. Take pictures.
Yes.
Or it didn't happen, as Scott says.
That's right. Send us a few. But Mark, a pleasure. Mark Morley with OpenText, a pleasure to have you with us here today.
Thanks very much, guys.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, Mark.
Man, I love Mark Morley's just steady approach, just simplifying things. Yeah, really. That's one of my favorite things about guests like that can really take complex issues like SCCN, those types of concepts, and make it where, any practitioner can follow along and engage in the conversation.
First of all, I'd love to play golf with that guy. I don't know if Mark plays golf. I probably should have asked, but he doesn't strike me as a club thrower, does he?
No, and I bet you won't hear any four-letter words.
Oh man! But if you played him for money, I feel like he would just slice you to the bone silently. Yes. Right? Just take everything in your wallet,
and it wouldn't even hurt. He'd do it in such a friendly manner. Well, hey, folks. So the secret's out. Mark is a great guest and a great practitioner to have as part of our interviews. I want to share a couple of comments here. So I think Sheldon's referring to all the things we couldn't get to. So he's saying, hey, once we get into music, it's all over. So Sheldon, on that note.
Yeah. Well,
what is your favorite musician or band or
genre, whatever? Let's hear it.
Let us know, Sheldon.
Yeah.
Mervyn, I'm with you. Thanks for the encouraging words, Mark, he says.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yep. Sophia.
It really is good to see that people are capitalizing on this digital transformation, because we hear reports all over the board, and when we talk to Laura, she has some frustration with some of the things that companies are saying they're going to do that they're not actually tackling. So it's good to hear that there are companies out there tackling, and they're going to be the ones advertising about the superiority of their supply chain very soon.
Excellent point. Sophia says, looking forward to that series, #young leaders. Hey, we are too. And we're trying to build it where the students actually host it and they can really have the conversation and really be authentic and real. So stay tuned. We're looking forward to it. Paula's going to bring it all the way back to National Shrimp Day. She says, and Paula, I hope this finds you well, with the rise in beef and chicken prices, maybe shrimp will become more affordable. How about that?
Paula likes her shrimp the way I do, which is butterflied and fried. So,
right.
Actually, I like shrimp anyway. All of those ways described, I like all of them.
Nick Rumor is with us. Nick, hope this finds you well. Loved your episode on sustainability on This Week in Business History, and hope this finds you and your team kicking butt here to start the week. Let's see here. Simon says Google searches, click views, vaccination rates, IoT usage rates, and so much more are enhancing the traditional history and promotions into planning forecasts right now. Whatever drivers you need, it can be obtained and used. Just need the right tool. How
That's
about
right.
that?
I think that, I think an important thing that Simon, he's got a gift for this, that Simon has hit on is for decades, centuries actually, we have been forecasting the items, not forecasting the consumers, not forecasting the customers. Items are doing what all these items have been doing back here. They don't have trends, they don't have patterns, they don't have spikes, they don't have dips, right? Items are a reflection of the consumer's demand or the customer's demand on them. So all of that data that he's talking about allows companies to better plan and forecast us, or aggregations of us that allows them to predict the right thing, which is critical to making the jump to supply chain effectiveness.
Excellent point. On a serious intellectual note, Clay Phillips shares baseball is 90% mental and the other half is physical. A great
You asked for Yogi Berraism. There it is, right?
I love it. Speaking of things that I love, I mentioned earlier on social, I never thought I'd say it, but I miss Joe Morgan doing ESPN Sunday Night Baseball. These days, the broadcast is so gimmicky. We missed a Freddie Freeman home run last night because they were doing some kind of complete sidebar interview. So rest in peace.
They were on YouTube the other night, and they didn't I don't think they communicated it well enough. People were going to look for it on television. Okay, we have important breaking news.
So
I'm on.
So, well, Greg, he says obviously he's Jamaican. I didn't realize you're Jamaican, Sheldon. But so reggae music and Chronics must be a reggae band, I'm assuming. You think?
Well, I know what it is. It may also be a reggae band.
Right. So I think this is Korai again. Estimates put the German gnome population at 25 million. Oh, that's funny. That is funny. Clay is also a big fan of reggae. Had no idea. Sophia, forecasting items versus consumers. Tell us about it. And then finally, Sylvia says golf is a 4-letter word. Hey,
if you live in Charleston, you better be ready to play some golf.
That's right. Okay. So folks, what a fast-paced, wild, wild west episode of the Supply Chain Buzz. Big thanks to Mark Morley, of course, and the OpenText team. Big thanks to all the folks that came out. I wish we could have gotten to all the comments here. A lot of interaction. We really appreciate that and engagement. And a lot of folks keep their sense of humor, right? And I love that, Greg. We need that to get through these challenging times. So, by the way, let's see. Simon says David Bowie, the Laughing Gnome. Is that a name of one of his LPs?
He was referred to that, as I recall, or referred to as that, if I recall that correctly. Not a huge Bowie fan.
No,
God, I shouldn't have said that on the air. Don't dislike his music. I'm just saying, was never that into Bowie.
Dark Side would come after you. Yeah, you better be careful. All right, folks. Hope y'all have a wonderful week. Greg, before we sign off, your one favorite thing that Mark Morley spoke about here today.
He spoke about freedom, and I know that's kind of a roundabout way to get in there, but companies have been hamstrung by these legacy implementations of these ancient technologies, mostly ERPs, and what OpenText and what this business to anything model and this data pipeline, what that is all about is freedom from the bondage of the limitations of this ancient technology. And it allows you to capture all the valuable data that's in those solutions and connect it to, as I said, more competent solutions and up your game and supply chain, increased visibility, all of that. That, to me, when I think about it, it's freeing.
Yes, agreed. Democratizing global business for sure. And on a serious note, Nick Roomer says more dad jokes next time. Hey, my son Ben has been reading about a 100-page book full of dad jokes, so I will bring those to each of y'all, whether you like it or not, on the next live stream. But Nick, thanks so much. Greg, a pleasure to have this conversation. Big thanks.
Yeah, likewise.
Mark Morley, Amanda, Clay, the rest of the team that makes this happen. And to all of y'all there in the cheap seats out in the community, may also making it happen. Peter, may you hit the ball well today in your round of golf, and great to hear you getting outside. But most importantly, folks, hey, do good, give forward, be the changes needed.
Look at you doing the count yourself.
Sorry, man.
No,
Sorry.
it's okay.
It was. I was trying to imitate Greg White there.
I like the inspiration, man. I like it.
But be like Enrique Alvarez at Vector Global, who's helping to lead that effort and get critical supplies to India. Y'all jump in and help out that effort if you can, vpod.org, or you can shoot them a note, india@vectorgl.com. Folks, have a wonderful afternoon, wonderful week. We'll see you next time right here at Supply Chain Now. Thanks, everybody.
Be out.